Call of Duty Black Ops 3's first DLC Zombies map, Der Eisendrache, was an instant classic among the Zombies community. It was much more back to basics than Shadows of Evil had been, which helped to win back the fanbase after Shadows of Evil initially left many feeling alienated. Der Eisendrache was so good that whatever Zombies map that came after would need to be at the same level of quality to satisfy the community, and the follow-up, Zetsubou no Shima, or Island of Despair in English, did not live up to set expectations. The map was panned by the Zombies community at launch, and for many years afterwards it was considered to be not only the worst map in Black Ops 3, but one of the worst Zombies maps ever made. Some people even went so far as to call it the worst Zombies map ever made. Opinions on the map are much more mixed nowadays, with a lot more people being openly positive towards the map, but Zetsubou no Shima is still seen in a pretty negative light by the community, even to this day. And that just makes me wonder, did Zetsubou no Shima deserve the hate? Is it really that big of a step down from Der Eisendrache that it deserves its negative reputation? That's what I'm here to find out. I'm Tactic Zombies, and welcome to part 4 of the Black Ops 3 Zombies 10-year anniversary retrospective series. Today we'll be talking about Black Ops 3's Black Sheep, Zetsubou no Shima, or Island of Despair. And hopefully we'll figure out if it deserves all the hate that it gets. I think the main reason why Zetsubou no Shima didn't click with people nearly the same way that Der Eisendrache did just boils down to the fact that Zetsubou no Shima is just about the opposite of Der Eisendrache in so many ways. Zetsubou is an extremely experimental map. It tries a bunch of new things, which we'll get into. But not much of the new stuff that the map tries was received very well by the community. For starters, the map has a pretty strange layout and setup process. The map can pretty much be split up into two different main sections: the outdoors part of the map and the bunker at the back of the map. The outdoors part of the map is pretty much laid out like a circle. You start at the bottom, and like most other Zombies maps, can take either the left path, which takes you past the crashed plane, past Laboratory A, and then to the area outside the bunker. Or you can take the right path, which takes you past the ancient ruins, past Laboratory B, and then to the same area outside the main bunker. Lab A and Lab B also each have an extra side area connected to them. Lab A has the Spider Cave, and Lab B has the area with the Element 115 meteor. Then there's the main bunker, which is much more claustrophobic. It's pretty much a straight line going back, with little rooms and offshoots shooting off of that main straight line. The bunker starts with a little entrance area that shoots off to the right and up a small stairway to the artillery battery. Go a little deeper into the bunker and you'll enter the middle section, which branches off to the left and to the right, as well as continuing even further into the bunker. On the left, you'll find the turbine room, which is where the map's power switch is located. This room is also connected to a loading dock, which is the little exterior part of the bunker. On the right is the living quarters, which is a decent sized room that's important for map progression and the Easter egg. The main distinguishing feature of this room is that it's absolutely filled with just a ton of dead bodies hung up from the ceiling, wrapped in cocoons made of spider webs, which is, very creepy. And if you head even deeper into the bunker, you'll reach the map's main laboratory, which is split up into two floors. The top floor is the specimen containment area, and it's filled with huge tubes with, test subjects and specimens just floating around. At the back of the room is a staircase that goes down to the lower level of the lab, which is where all the actual equipment is. And finally, if you go a little bit deeper past the laboratory, you can enter the flooded, unfinished tunnel, which is a claustrophobic, underwater section of the bunker that is important for map and quest progression. But it's a very dangerous area, and you're very unlikely to spend any real time here once you're fully set up. This is the bulk of the playable area of Zetsubou no Shima, not including areas that you go to during the main quest. It is a very large map, definitely one of the biggest in the game, although I'm pretty sure Shadows of Evil is still bigger. The map is sprawling, and there's stuff around pretty much every single corner. Really, the scale about this map is one of the most polarizing things about Zetsubou. It can be a very daunting map to play since there's so much you have to think about when you're playing it. Inside of the spawn room, but also in a couple other spots around the map, you can find a bucket with glowing splotches of blue on it that you can pick up. This bucket is one of the most important tools in your arsenal for progressing the map. The bucket allows you to carry water that's been infused with Element 115, and there are three main types of water that can be found scattered all across the map. There's blue water, which is found by Laboratory A, and this pool is right in front of the entrance to the Spider Cave and has several decent-sized 115 meteors sitting in it. Then there's the green water by Laboratory B, and this pool is right in front of the giant 115 meteor that can be found off in its own area next to Laboratory B. And lastly is the purple water, found inside of the bunker in the corner of the living quarters. There's this big hole in the wall next to the pool, and sure enough, there's a large 115 deposit contaminating the water, turning it purple and glowy and magical. And that's all well and good, but what exactly is the bucket necessary for? You see, to get inside of the bunker, you need to turn on the power switch. But when I was giving the rundown of the map, you may have noticed that I mentioned that the power switch is inside of the bunker. So there's some other way that you can get the bunker door open, and that's because Zetsubou introduces a semi-new mechanic to the mode, temporary power. And I say semi-new because the Origins generators are also temporary if you let them get destroyed by zombies, but it's also handled completely different there from how Zetsubou handles it. Basically, both Laboratory A and B have their own power system that powers up their half of the map. The power is activated by pouring element 115 water into these machines in the main room of each lab. This will give you a few minutes of power in that area before the power turns off and you need to put more water in the machine. That sounds annoying, and it really would be if it were the method of powering up the map long term, but if you power up both labs at the same time, that'll give enough power to the main bunker for you to open up the main doors. Just hang a left in the comm center and you'll reach the main power room, which will allow you to permanently power up the whole map for the rest of the game. Once you go into the power room though, you aren't able to flip the switch, and you can see that of the 4 lights next to the switch, 3 are green and 1 is red. Sure enough, if you go up to the switch, it will tell you to unclog the underwater turbines. Behind the switch and below the rest of the power room is an underwater section, and turbine 3 is clogged with spider webs. Unclog it and this will begin an underwater lockdown. Of all the Black Ops 3 maps, Zetsubou is the only one that features swimming at all, let alone in such a prominent way. It feels to me like at this point in the dev cycle, Treyarch were trying to incorporate as much of the Black Ops 3 movement into the maps as they could. Shadows of Evil had the wall running, Horizon Rock had the undercroft and its low gravity movement, and Zetsubou has swimming. There are 4 spots deep enough on the map to swim in, but only 3 of them are relevant in any capacity, and once you're set up, there's only one of them that you'll ever really even go back to, possibly. Firstly, in the spawn room, there's a chunk of the swamp that's in bounds and deep enough for you to swim in. This one has no relevance to any Easter eggs or progression, at least as far as I know. It's mostly just here so that players who are new to the map can walk into it and find out that swimming is something you can do on this map. So I'd say that this little patch of swamp water does serve a pretty good purpose, especially since zombies is a mode where typically if water is any deeper than waist deep, you just can't go in it. Then there's the power room's underwater section. This is really important for when you're getting set up, since obviously you have to go down there to turn on the permanent power. But after you've done that, there's really no reason to come back here unless you really want the Argus, because the wall buy is down there. But this is a bigger underwater area than the one in the spawn room, and you're guaranteed to fight zombies down here when you're turning on the power. You're also required to stay down here longer than you can hold your breath for, so you need to balance fighting zombies with popping up into the little air pockets that are in the area so that you don't drown. Third is the unfinished tunnel. This is the largest underwater section on the map and is also the narrowest. There's a couple turns and a couple bits of unmined rock to break up your sight lines, but it's pretty much a straight path to the back. There's also a deeper portion of the tunnel, the 115 tunnel, which this is literally just a tunnel down with no air pockets, although on the bright side, zombies won't follow you down there. It's very important for building and upgrading the Wonder Weapon, but you'll never come down here once you're fully set up. And finally, there's this tiny little underwater section next to the green water near Lab B. Long term, this is honestly the one that you might be using the most just because it's connected to one of the fast travel routes in and out of the bunker, which I'll get more into later. I really like the underwater portions on Zetsubou, since they spice up the map and help it stand out from the rest of the Black Ops 3 maps. But I also like how sparingly the map uses these sections. If the map was designed in a way that you needed to go underwater every 5 minutes or so for the entire game, it would get really repetitive, which is already a problem a lot of people have with the map. A couple of mandatory underwater sequences that once you're done with them you can pretty much forget about the mechanic is a good way to make swimming a big part of the map while also not making the mechanic overstay its welcome. But yeah, getting the power on. Once you unclog the 3rd turbine, the lockdown sequence will begin in the underwater portion of the power room. The door will shut and zombies will start entering the area. Like I said, the challenge here is in balancing killing the zombies while also popping up for air in the few spots that you can. But if you kill all the zombies, the lockdown will end and you can exit the water and turn on the power switch, providing permanent power to the entirety of the map. And once you turn the power on, several fast travel routes open up for you to get in and out of the bunker more quickly from Lab A and Lab B. Lab A has a set of zip lines that run to the loading dock next to the power room. They cost 250 points to use and can be taken both ways. Then there's a sewer tunnel that costs 500 points and runs from the lowest level of the bunker to the pool of water next to the green water near Lab B. Like the zipline, this goes both ways, and it's the fast travel method I use the most. I just find it more convenient since it takes you way deeper into the bunker and as a result saves you a lot of time. And once you get the power on, you're probably going to start thinking about getting your perks. And Zetsubou mixes things up from Horizon Rock because the majority of the perk locations on the map are randomized every single game. The only 2 that are static are Mule Kick right next to the underwater tunnel in the bunker, and the second is a Widow's Wine machine, which I won't talk about right now because it's a bit of a secret. but that's static every single game too. But all the other perks, Juggernog, Speed Cola, Double Tap, Stamina Up, and Quick Revive are randomized each game between a variety of spots, some inside of the bunker and some outside of the bunker. The only exception to the randomness is Quick Revive if you're playing in solo. 2 perk machines will be airdropped near the spawn room out of a plane near the beginning of the game, and in solo, Quick Revive will be the first perk to be dropped. I really like how Zetsubou handles its randomized perks, since there's no time aspect at play here like there is in a map like Nuketown Zombies. Save for the 2 perks that get dropped in by the plane, all perks are on the map from the get-go, and even the plane perks get dropped in pretty much immediately. Them getting dropped in is really more of a spectacle thing than it is a factor in actual gameplay. It's pretty much the same thing as the randomized perks on the Giant. It's really just something to help add a little bit of extra variety from one game to the next, which I appreciate. The overall perk lineup is the same 9 as on Rise and Rock, which means that nothing's been taken away, but it also means that there aren't any new perks on the map either. Then there's the Pack-a-Punch process on the map, which is honestly really simple for how complicated most other aspects of Zetsubou are. The Pack-a-Punch machine is located inside of the comms room in the center of the bunker, and a lower level than the rest of the room. The problem is that at the start of the game, the Pack-a-Punch area is flooded and a door is blocking the stairs down to the machine. Along the walkway above the Pack-a-Punch machine, right in front of each of the 3 doors that you can buy in this area, are 3 pumps. Each of them are missing a different part. You need to find the 3 parts to repair the 3 pumps to drain the water out of the Pack-a-Punch area. The first part is pretty much a freebie. It's the handle for the pump in front of the power room. This part is trapped inside of the clogged turbine that you have to clear to turn on the permanent power. As soon as the turbine is clear, the part flows out into the underwater section. I mean, if you really want, you can grab this part before you even leave the water to flip on the power switch. Next is the pressure gauge for the pump outside of the living quarters. Remember when I mentioned that the living quarters is filled with dead bodies hanging in cocoons? Well, you have to slash these cocoons open with your knife, since the pressure gauge is inside a random cocoon each game. Slashing open a cocoon will also make a zombie drop out of it, so you have to be mindful of that. Just keep opening cocoons and eventually you'll get the gauge to drop. Lastly is the valve, found in the flooded tunnel. You just need to swim through the section and just check everywhere. You'll find the valve eventually. It's easy to spot since it has a bright yellow aura around it to help it stand out more. Then just take the 3 parts, repair the 3 pumps, and then watch as the Pack-a-Punch area is drained of water, letting you get down there to use the machine to upgrade your weapons. Sadly, the Pack-a-Punch camo is pretty underwhelming. This is one of the last Zombies maps not to have color variants for its Pack-a-Punch camo, and is the last map in Black Ops 3 not to have any variants, and it could really use some. The camo is called Overgrowth, and is supposed to look like moss and vines on your gun with some glowing yellow spots that I think are supposed to be spores. The worst thing about the camo is the specific shades of green and yellow that it uses, since they look kind of ugly. That's probably on purpose, but the point still stands. It also feels like a big step back in general from having the whole set of Pack-a-Punch camos on Rise and Rock. Now every gun ends up looking pretty much the same on Zetsubou when they're all upgraded. Speaking of weapons, Zetsubou introduced several new guns, not even including wonder weapons, to the game mode. 2 of them are even completely exclusive to Zetsubou. First up is the HG40. This is Black Ops 3's version of the MP40. At least it was until they just added the actual MP40 into the game in Zombies Chronicles. It's a low damage SMG with a huge ammo reserve. You get over 400 rounds with this thing even when it's not upgraded. It's best as a points gun in the early rounds since you just have so much ammo. It can be pack-a-punched into the Afterburner 2.0, which gives it a damage boost and makes the magazine hold 64 rounds instead of 32. Even pack-a-punched, the gun's damage isn't great and it falls off pretty early. It's definitely more of an early to mid-round gun, and that's something you'll want to hold on to for the whole game. Next is the MX Garand, the futuristic version of the M1 Garand. It holds 8 rounds in the clip, and it has the gimmick that you can't reload the gun manually. You can only reload it after the clip has been emptied and it ejects on its own. The best thing about the MX Garand is the headshot multiplier, which is nuts. This gun is just a headshot machine, plain and simple. The one downside is the low clip size. If you don't hit your shots, it can be easy to be surrounded while you're stuck reloading. Its Pack-a-Punch version is called Lang's Ping Beast, and this ups the clip size to 30 bullets, which pretty much solves the ammo problem. This thing is really, really good, and can definitely take you really far if you're precise with your shots. The HG40 and MX Garand would both return on at least one more Black Ops 3 map, with the MX Garand returning for most of the Zombies Chronicles maps as well. This thing's in, I think, the majority, or at least like half of the Black Ops 3 maps in total. But Zetsubou's other 2 new guns are completely exclusive to the map. There's the Razorback, another SMG. Fun fact, this was actually supposed to be in Rise and Rock, but for some reason, it wasn't added until Zetsubou. It can be spotted in one of the earlier Rise and Rock trailers. There really isn't too much that's special about the Razorback other than the fact that it is exclusive to one map. It's got pretty average stats, but when it gets Pack-a-Punch, it becomes the Golden Bursty, which does the typical Pack-a-Punch changes, more ammo and more damage. The Golden Bursty is a really solid gun, but not anything to really write home about. Again, if the Razorback was on every map in Black Ops 3, it wouldn't be anywhere near as notable as it is on Zetsubou. Still, map-exclusive weapons are cool even if they aren't the best guns in the game. But they're even cooler when they are. The dual-wield Marshall 16s are the final exclusive non-wonder weapon on Zetsubou, but believe me, these things are pretty wonderful. They're a pair of dual-wield double-barrel shotgun pistols. The closest comparison I can think of is the Akimbo Rangers from the OG Modern Warfare 2. Each Marshall holds 2 shells at once, but you fire both barrels each time you pull the trigger, so you basically get one shot before you have to reload them. The Marshalls are a powerhouse. They're one of the strongest ballistic weapons in Black Ops 3 zombies and probably all of zombies. When you Pack-a-Punch them, they just get even better, turning into the Perrin and Velez, which is basically a wonder weapon. The ammo capacity raises to 6 shells in each pistol, so you get 3 shots before reloading. And the damage increases a ton. These things melt everything in front of you, and since you're reloading all the time with them, you're basically untouchable if you have Widow's Wine and Electric Cherry. There is a very good reason the Marshall 16s are one of the fan-favorite weapons that come out of Black Ops 3 zombies, despite only being on the least popular map. They're just that good. Zetsubou gives you a good amount of new, powerful weapons to help you take on everything the map throws at you, and you're gonna need them, because the map also introduces 2 new enemy types. Spiders and mutated zombies, which the fanbase have colloquially... Why did I write that? I don't know how to pronounce it. Colloquially. Okay. Spiders and mutated zombies, which the fanbase have colloquially named Thrashers. The Spiders are the Hellhound equivalent on the map. They have their own dedicated round, which you'll know is starting because an air raid siren will start blaring and the map will be covered in a blue fog. And you'll get a spider web border around your screen if you needed another hint on top of all that something was up. And then eventually they'll start spawning in alongside normal zombies during the high rounds. The Spiders are pretty neat enemies, all things considered. They are extremely weak. Their melee attacks don't do much damage and they have very low health. I don't know any specific numbers, but it feels like their health is around the same as like the Parasites, which makes sense since they serve the same purpose. On top of the melee, the Spiders can also shoot webs at you as a ranged attack. But the webs aren't just an attack, as the Spiders can use their webs to hinder the player in other ways. The biggest and most obvious is that they can block doorways with their webs, so that you can't go through them. That they can also web up perk machines and gobblegum machines, making them unusable. Being covered in webs is actually the starting state of most of the perk machines and gobblegum machines on the map, meaning you'll have to remove the webs so that you can use them. Clearing the webs is easy though. You can either just hold X on a web doorway or machine to clear the webs with your knife. And this is actually where the Bowie knife comes in really handy since it clears webs way faster than the normal knife. So on Zetsubou, that weapon has a bit more utility than most other maps. Or you can also just use explosives to destroy the webs. If you throw a grenade at the webs, it'll get stuck and destroy the webs when it blows up. But you can also use the XM53, the ray gun, Widow's Wine grenades, or the Wonder Weapon. And when you destroy webs, you'll get 10 points. So the Spiders are pretty cool. They fit the vibe of the map and they aren't too annoying. Then there's the Thrashers, so the main boss enemy of the map. These are mutated zombie plant hybrid monsters, and honestly, they kind of feel like a much beefier version of the Ivies from the Resident Evil 2 remake. Although really, that came out after this, and the Ivies weren't in the original Resident Evil 2. Whatever, they're like roided up Ivies. One of the neat things about the Thrashers is that the number of them that you get during the course of your game is dynamic. You can have games of Zetsubou where you hardly get any Thrashers, compared to some other games where you'll get tons of them. This is because not only do they spawn in occasionally at the start of a round like most other mini-bosses and zombies, they can also be spawned by one of Zetsubou's other new mechanics, spores. At a bunch of set points around the map, spores will grow on the walls. The spores will grow bigger over the course of a couple rounds, and when they're fully mature, they'll pulsate and make noise like a beating heart, which is fucking nasty. When the spores are broken, either by the player attacking them or by a zombie walking next to a fully mature spore, it will explode and leave a cloud of spores lingering in the air. If you, as the player, walk into the spores, you'll slow down to a crawl and start coughing, which means you can't shoot at zombies. So these are an obstacle that you really want to avoid. Really, the main use case of spores is when you're underwater, since if you shoot a spore underwater and are swimming right next to it, it'll release bubbles that let you breathe and replenish your air supply. But the spores are also how Thrashers spawn, and this is demonstrated when you first open the bunker. There will be a handful of zombies covered in spores right inside of the bunker, and one of them is guaranteed to mutate into a Thrasher. When zombies walk through a spore cloud, they have a random chance of mutating, and if they do, then they'll be pulled underground by a bunch of big roots and will re-emerge as a Thrasher. The Thrashers really are a lot like a Resident Evil enemy, more like a Resident Evil boss, since they have 3 large glowing spores on their body that act as their weak spots you have to target. Shooting the spores is the best way to kill the Thrashers, but the problem is that once you destroy the spores on a Thrasher's body, they leave a cloud of spores that can turn another zombie into another Thrasher. So not only can you have games where you get a ton of Thrashers, they're also just a really dangerous boss enemy. They hit like a truck for starters. They're melee only, but their melee attack can one-hit you if you don't have Juggernog and will red screen you if you do. They're easily one of the hardest hitting enemies in the game, on par with the Margwas with their slam attack. And in co-op, once they down you, they will eat you, meaning that your teammates will have to kill the Thrasher before they can revive you, which is actually a really cool mechanic that I'm surprised Treyarch never used again. They can also quickly travel around the map via the underground in order to basically teleport to another player if there aren't any close enough to them. But even without teleporting, they're pretty fast. Once they spawn in, they're in a docile state, but once they take damage, they become enraged, they'll get this red aura around them, and they'll start sprinting. The Thrashers are a big love it or hate it enemy type, and personally, I'm a big fan of them. I think they're really creepy and gross, and I think they're really cool. But I know a lot of people find them very annoying, especially since you don't get any real reward for killing them. Your reward is that the Thrasher is dead, and sometimes if you get unlucky, your reward for killing a Thrasher is just more Thrashers. They also have a ton of health, meaning that they're a real bullet sponge, especially on the early rounds. This is another love it or hate it thing that I love, since it really does help to deepen the survival horror vibe that Zetsubou has going on. With most other zombie bosses, you know when they'll first show up every game, like round 8 for the Panzer on Origins, and you know you'll only get one of them at a time, at least until the mid to late game. This just doesn't apply to the Thrasher, and it makes every game stand out, and also, for me at least, keeps you on your toes since you never know if you're going to get around with a ton of Thrashers or not. And when you do, it's a really big difficulty spike that I personally really enjoy. The best weapons when dealing with the Thrashers are the Marshall 16s, shotguns, and the map's buildable wonder weapon, the Kusanagi no Tsurugi, also known as the KT-4. You build the KT-4 in the lowest level of the bunker. The gun itself is already assembled at the workbench, but you need to find 3 ingredients to create the formula for the weapon's ammunition. Hints for the 3 parts can be seen on the wall behind the workstation, and they're all pretty easy to get. The simplest is the green vial. Once you turn on the power and spend enough time at Lab B, a scientist zombie will spawn in with a green aura around him. Kill the zombie and he'll drop the green vial that you need. Next is the plant, which can be found at the very bottom of the flooded tunnel in the bunker way at the bottom of the 115 tunnel. You just need to swim down there and grab the plant, and if you don't drown, you're set. The last part is the spider essence, which is the trickiest to get since during the early game, spiders are pretty rare outside of their own rounds. But once you have a spider, take it to Lab A and lower the cage. The cage has spider bait in it, and if you leave the spider near the lowered cage, it'll crawl inside. Go back into the lab, raise the cage up, then use the giant syringe to obtain the spider essence from the spider. Take the ingredients back to the workbench and they'll be combined to make the formula that finishes the KT-4. The KT-4 is a really simple weapon to use. You have 6 shots in the mag, although I think canister is a better term for it, but you can shoot less powerful shots or charge it up at the cost of 2 or 3 doses of formula. I don't know what to say since you aren't using bullets with this thing, but you use 2 or 3 shots instead of 1. The most effective way to use the KT-4 is to charge up a shot all the way and then shoot it at the ground. This will make a bubbling, glowing green puddle of goo on the floor. Any zombies that walk into it will grow vines out of them and these gross, veiny boils before they explode into goo and die. It's a lot like the Sliquifier from Die Rise. The charged up shot is also the most effective way to deal with Thrashers, as 1 or 2 fully charged shots is enough to kill a Thrasher. And because of how the KT-4's formula interacts with the Thrasher's spores, they won't make the cloud that infects more zombies if you use the KT-4 to kill them, which also makes it the safest way to kill Thrashers, especially when you're playing on solo and you can't easily isolate Thrashers from the normal zombies to kill them on their own without, spreading the spores. The KT-4 really shines when you're camping and just have all the zombies funneling towards you and straight through the goop. It's not as good when you're running around in training since it's a bit slow to actually kill zombies, and it's especially not that great at saving you if a zombie runs in front of you and blocks you. If you're running around, you're honestly probably better off with the Marshall 16s. Oh, and I forgot to mention the KT-4 will always insta-kill spiders no matter if you use a single shot or a charged shot. You might think that this means that there's no reason to ever not charge the KT-4, but you'd be wrong, since the weapon has several other utilities aside from killing enemies. And the single shot is much better suited for these, since using a full charge would be just a waste of ammo. The KT-4 can destroy spider webs if you shoot them with it. This works for the normal white webs that block doors and cover the perk machines, but there are also a couple of blue spider webs around the map that only the KT-4 can destroy, so it's required for some Easter egg quest stuff as well. The main blue spider web that you can destroy is the one by the blue water pool at Lab A. It opens up a cave, and if you go inside, you'll enter the giant spider's lair, and a boss fight will begin. It's a pretty easy boss. The spider will spit webs at you, try to stomp on you with its front legs, and sometimes spawn in a bunch of smaller spiders to swarm you. You damage the giant spider by shooting it in its mouth when it's puking up yellow gunk. If you do enough damage, the spider will be staggered. Just repeat this a couple times, keep shooting in its mouth when it's yellow and foamy, and you'll kill it. The fight's definitely on the easier side, especially if you have a pack-a-punch weapon by this point, which you probably should before going into this boss fight. Your main reward for killing the spider is found on the way out of the cave. You'll pass by a glowing pool, and there's basically this moonshine still with a Widow's Wine logo on it, meaning that this is where Widow's Wine comes from. And the Widow's Wine from this pool is free, which is legit such a nice reward for killing an optional boss like the giant spider. But back to the KT4. If you shoot a spore with the KT4, the orange cloud that would normally make you cough will instead give you a speed boost. This can be super helpful for getting around the map quickly, but you can't do it too frequently just because the number of spores on the map is limited. And the KT4 can also be used to fertilize and upgrade your plants in the whole gardening system that Zetsubou has, which I'm going to be getting into in a couple minutes. The KT4 has its fans, like me, but it's also by far the least popular wonder weapon out of Black Ops 3. Definitely out of the main 6 maps, but also I'd include the Zombies Chronicles maps in on that. I think this is the least popular wonder weapon in the entire game. I wouldn't even say it's a disliked or hated wonder weapon, it just feels very overlooked compared to most other wonder weapons in the franchise. The main reason that the KT4 is such a slept-on wonder weapon is just that it's one of the less extravagant ones in the game. It's not the weakest in the game, since unlike the Ray Gun Mark III on Go Rod, it is actually infinite damage. The KT4 is just, like I said, the least extravagant. Unironically, half the maps in the game have wonder weapons that shoot or make black holes, and then there's the bows on Horizon Drock, which are all super cool and unique. A gun that shoots goop is just a lot less inventive and unique. Again, we'd already seen a super similar weapon like this 4 years earlier on Die Rise. But aside from the Thrashers and the KT4, Zetsubou has one other really unique mechanic that has never been seen again: gardening. Pretty frequently on Zetsubou, when you kill a zombie, they will drop a seed that will have a blue power-up aura like a Widow's Wine recharge or the Tramfuse on Horizon Drock. You can pick up these seeds and they'll go into your inventory, and you can have up to 3 of them at a time. All around the map, you'll find these little circle plots of soil surrounded with stones. At these plots, you can plant the seed, and then over the course of the next 3 rounds, the seed will grow into a plant that you can harvest for a reward. You can also decide to water the seeds each round with the different colors of 115 water found around the map to grow different plants. People really overcomplicate this system when talking about it online, but it really just boils down to 5 different recipes for growing plants. Use no water and you'll get a low tier reward plant, and this will give you junk items like an MR6, live grenades, or more zombies to kill. Green water grows a crawler plant. These will chop the legs off of a zombie for you and then hold the crawler for up to 10 minutes while you go do other stuff around the map. Purple water grows a trap plant. It'll attract zombies to it and eat their heads off with its mouth, kind of like a crazy mutated Venus flytrap. Blue water grows better reward plants for you. You'll get better guns like assault rifles and shotguns, as well as low tier power-ups from them. And lastly, if you water a plant with each of the 3 different main types of water, you'll grow a fruit plant. You can eat the fruit and you'll have a 50-50 chance of either getting a free perk or having your character projectile vomit. The plant system is pretty cool in my opinion, and I feel like it gets way too much hate online. It doesn't require a ton of time dedicated to it each round, especially if you're planting all your seeds in one specific area of the map. Obviously, if you've got plants going all over the map, you're going to need to do a lot more running around to water them all each round. Really, the worst part about the system, in my opinion, is just that the green and purple water plants feel kind of pointless for 90% of players. The purple water plant is cool since it kills zombies for you, but it doesn't last super long and it can only kill 1 zombie at a time, kind of like the Chomper from Plants vs. Zombies, funnily enough. The crawler holder plant sounds awesome on paper, especially for doing Easter egg steps. I mean, that's pretty much every zombie player's dream, to not have to worry about holding the last zombie while you progress the quest. But spoiler alert, there aren't really any Easter egg steps on Zetsubou, or even really any side Easter eggs that should take up to 10 minutes to do, and also let you do everything on 1 round. A lot of them you have to burn rounds for, which this plant obviously doesn't let you do. If the crawler plant was on any of the other Black Ops 3 maps, it'd be super useful, but ironically Zetsubou is the one map where something like that is a little pointless. Hands down, the best plant type to go for are the reward plants. Sure, getting free perks from the fruit plant can be nice, but with gobblegums, there are already so many ways to get free perks. Plus, if you shoot a seed with the KT4 each time you water it, you'll upgrade the plant. This just increases the time that the purple and green plants are active. I mean, like, this turns the crawler plant into holding a crawler for an hour, which is just way overkill. But this actually upgrades the loot pool of items that you can get from a blue water plant. One of the things that you can get are actual glass perk bottles to give you more perk slots, so there's no real reason not to use the blue water outside of some specific Easter eggs. The map also has a pair of buildables, the shield and the gas mask. The shield is pretty standard as far as zombie shields go. One part of the body can be found by Lab A, another part can be found by Lab B, and then the window of the shield can be found in the bunker next to the AA gun. There's 3 build tables on the map, one in the living quarters of the bunker, and then one in Lab A, and then one in Lab B, and personally, I always build the shield in Lab B. This is the most boring shield in Black Ops 3. The shield itself is actually the same model as the Origins shield, but very overgrown looking with roots and leaves all over it. This shield doesn't even have a special gimmick right off the bat like every other shield in Black Ops 3 does, this one is purely just for protection. Then there's the gas mask. You need to find the tubing at the plane crash, the respirator near the green water pool, and then an air tank at the small dock next to the power room. And I always build this one inside of the bunker next to the purple water pool. The gas mask nullifies the effects of breathing in spores. If you run through a spore cloud while wearing the mask, instead of coughing and slowing down, you'll just see the gas mask icon appear in your HUD, and some of its durability will be depleted. And if your gas mask breaks, you can always just go grab another one for free. And both of these buildables are must-haves when playing on Zetsubou. I don't really have much else to say, they're very self-explanatory. There's also the 2 traps on the map, the plane propeller trap and the fan trap, and both of these function very similarly. The plane trap can be found at, well, the plane crash. For 1,000 points, the 2 propellers of the plane, which are normally hung above the rest of the area by wires that are caught in the trees, will power on and lower down, killing any zombies and thrashers that walk into them. Players can crawl under the propellers while they're active, or you can just run to the left and drop off this little cliff behind the propellers. Then there's the fan trap, right outside the door to the AA platform at the top of the stairs in the bunker. This one also costs 1,000 points, and sucks zombies and players into the fan in the wall. It even sucks the fan's cover up the first time you use the trap. The traps on Zetsubou are pretty cool, but they're very situational, which really is like most other traps on most other maps. The main reason most players use the traps on Zetsubou are for the challenge system, which is the last major system that the map adds. Zetsubou didn't introduce the challenge system into zombies, Origins did, but Zetsubou is the first map to have them since Origins, and is the map that changed the system into the version that most maps would have going forward. And that's because of one major change. The challenges you get assigned at the beginning of every single game are randomized, unlike Origins where each player had the exact same set of challenges every single game. On Zetsubou, you'll get randomly assigned 3 of 16 different challenges each game, ranging from so easy that you can do them blindfolded practically, to requiring a decent amount of setup to do. You can see your challenges at the challenge podium in the ruins next to the spawn room. Each of the 4 glowing totem poles correlate to a different player. The challenges have 3 different tiers as well, and you'll get a challenge from each tier each game. Your tier 1 challenge will give you a free max ammo, tier 2 will give you a gun, and tier 3 will give you a free perk bottle that gives you an extra perk slot. The challenge system is great because it gives you a few extra things that you can do every single game to keep yourself busy. And unless you're going for Easter eggs, the challenges can be completely ignored. That's honestly the worst thing about how Zetsubou handles the challenge system, that you are required to complete them for a lot of the Easter eggs on the map. Most other maps keep the challenges 100% optional, which is how I think they should be handled. Still, they have some very good rewards for usually not too much work. That challenge for killing thrashers before they can become enraged, though, can be a real pain in the ass to do. If everyone in the game completes their challenges, then lightning will begin to strike the challenge podium. This lightning can charge up and upgrade your shield into a lightning shield. You can melee perk machines and other panels around the map to give yourself discounts and find secrets, which is a pretty cool reward for doing all your challenges. The worst part is that this is required for the Easter egg quest and even just for upgrading the KT4, so if you aren't playing with a full team of competent players, then you can pretty much kiss all of that goodbye. I think it would be better if lightning started striking the podium once one player finished all their challenges, but would strike the podium more frequently the higher number of players complete all their challenges. That seems like a better way to incentivize doing the challenges while not punishing the whole team when one player is falling behind. And also located at the challenge podium are 4 bloody skulls placed around the center altar, which are the keys to acquiring the map's specialist weapon, the Skull of Non-Stopway. To get the skull, you need to first cleanse the 4 bloody skulls. Each skull is placed on its own little pedestal, and each skull has a set of symbols branded into its forehead. Scattered around the map are a different set of 4 pedestals, which also have symbols on them. There's a pedestal in the spawn room, one by the plane crash, one at the bunker dock, and one at the bottom of the lab in the bunker. You need to match the symbols on a skull to the symbols at a pedestal. You place the matching skull into a pedestal to begin the cleansing ritual. You just need to defend the skull from glowing green zombies, spiders, and thrashers. Once you finish the ritual, the skull will be cleansed and you can return it to its place on the challenge pedestal. The skull will sink down into the pedestal, and then you can repeat the process with the 3 other skulls. Once you've cleansed and returned all 3 skulls, lightning will strike and destroy a log next to the pedestal and reveal a set of stairs leading to a lower chamber of the ruins. Head down the stairs, and in the middle of this room is the skull of Zetsubou, which is actually the skull of a keeper. Interact with the skull to begin the final ritual, which is a lockdown, where you'll be swarmed by a bunch of keepers who try and protect the skull. Survive their attack, and you'll be given the skull of Zetsubou, or skull_gun as it's called in the game files, which I think is one of the coolest specialist weapons in the game. The skull of Zetsubou is very similar to the crystal skull from Indiana Jones. Frankly, I wouldn't be very surprised if that was one of its main inspirations. The skull has 2 main abilities, Mesmerize and Vaporize. Mesmerize makes any zombies, thrashers, and spiders just chill out and stop attacking you if you use it on them. This is cool and is especially helpful for the Kill a Thrasher who is an enraged challenge, but this ability is mostly used for Easter eggs and finding secrets. Most of the time when you pull out the skull, you'll be using the Vaporize attack, which lifts zombies into the air and vaporizes them. This is a super powerful ability and one of the best ways to kill thrashers. When you combine this with the glitch to give the skull infinite ammo, it becomes one of the most busted weapons in the game since you can literally just camp forever with it. And that's about it when it comes to the skull. I'll be talking more about it throughout the video, but gameplay wise, it's super simple. Literally just point and vaporize. But the skull is also significant since it's pretty much the only tie to the Lovecraftian aspects of Black Ops 3. And that's pretty much everything Zetsubou has to offer gameplay wise. Honestly, aside from Shadows of Evil, I think it's the map that innovates the most out of any Black Ops 3 map. It just sucks that most of Zetsubou's innovations didn't land for most of the zombies community. Zetsubou definitely has its diehard fans, like, myself obviously included, but even still, it's a map I play very sparingly. But when I do play it, I end up loving it since it's just such a different experience from the rest of Black Ops 3, and it's also, I think at least, the most challenging map in the game aside from maybe Shadows of Evil at launch. I'd also say Zetsubou is the hardest map in the game to just sit down and play. The setup process is very lengthy, and it can be a real slog to get through if you don't find the map enjoyable to play. You really need to be in the right mood to play Zetsubou. If you aren't, then you're just going to be in for a rough time. Shit, I only play Zetsubou maybe a handful of times a year. I played Zetsubou more when making this video in the past couple months than I played it in the last 4 or 5 years combined. And even I, Zetsubou's biggest defender, am starting to get a little burnt out of it. But when you're in that Zetsubou no Shima mood, it just hits different. Love or hate all the gimmicky features like the plants, thrashers, spiderwebs, etc., they do all come together to make a very cohesive experience. The map knows exactly what it's going for, and it's not for everybody. It's not even for most people, but it is for me, so Zetsubou holds a very special place in my heart. I probably wouldn't call it a top 10 zombies map or anything, and I do think it's objectively on the lower end of Black Ops 3's maps quality-wise, but it's still a map I really enjoy. There just isn't anything else like it in the game. And hey, being the worst zombies map in the best zombies game is still nothing to scoff at. Zetsubou no Shima continues the story of the Primus crew and their mission to kill off their older selves to secure a better tomorrow. Their mission takes them to a Division 9 facility on an isolated island in Imperial Japanese Micronesia where Ultimus Takeo is being held prisoner. Much like how Dryzendrach and the Giant were set in the Deceptio fracture, Zetsubou is set in the Prototone fracture, which features its own set of changes. Unlike the Deceptio fracture, we only get one map set in the Prototone fracture, so it isn't as well fleshed out as the other fracture. But still, it diverges off from the main timeline, with the death of Ultimus Richtofen and the Giant being the main branching point. One of my favorite things about the story and lore of Zetsubou no Shima is that it focuses on Division 9, who are the Japanese counterpart to Germany's Group 935 in the zombie storyline. This is actually the map that Division 9 was introduced on, although it was also retconned that Shinonuma from World at War was their other, earlier, original base, also referred to as the Rising Sun facility in-universe. Division 9 is one of the most despicable groups in the COD Zombie storyline because they're based on one of the most despicable groups to ever exist in real life, Unit 731. Unit 731 was a secret research group that operated in Imperial Japanese-controlled Manchuria between 1935 and 1945. They focused on biological warfare, but they did all sorts of just horrible, sick experiments on POWs and civilians alike. I don't know how much detail I can get into about what they did without getting demonetized, but I also don't really want to get into the details of their experiments, since it's legitimately horrible stuff. Unit 731 and its leader Shiro Ishii are some of the most depraved people to ever live. And sadly, much like what happened to a lot of high-ranking Nazi scientists and researchers, most of Unit 731's high-ranking members pretty much got away with everything scot-free because they were given immunity by the US in exchange for their research data. But if you're really just deathly curious about them, you can research at your own risk. And while it's never outright confirmed that Division 9 is supposed to be a part of Unit 731, it's pretty heavily implied. The real-life Unit 731 had 8 divisions, so obviously Division 9, it logically follows. Division 9 is significant though, because the Ultimates version of Takeo Masaki was placed in charge of their facility at Shinonuma on behalf of the Emperor of Japan. In the main timeline, on June 15th, 1943, Takeo confronts the Emperor about the horrible experiments and research being conducted at the Rising Sun facility. Only a few days later, the Emperor ordered Takeo to be taken prisoner by Division 9, and he ended up getting sent to Group 935's Siberian facility to be used as a test subject by Edward Richthofen. And that's how he ends up with the rest of the Ultimates crew, and they go on their big adventure. But in the Prototone fracture, the events played out differently. Similarly, but still differently. In this timeline, the original Rising Sun facility was overrun on April 12th of 1942. Just a side note, but can I say how neat it is that we have exact dates for practically everything that happens in the COD Zombies Aether story? Even events like this that only happened in one fracture and are only relevant to one map, like, this alternate version of Shinonuma that we never see. Anyways, in this fracture, despite Shinonuma being overrun, the Emperor was nonetheless impressed with what Division 9 had accomplished, so he authorized the building of the second facility on the island of Pohnpei in Micronesia, earlier than it was constructed in the main timeline. Apparently the Zetsubou no Shima facility does exist in the main timeline and not just in Zetsubou, although we never see it in the main timeline. All we really know about it in the main timeline is that the Broken Arrow group ransacked it and kept pretty much everything that they found there at the Groom Lake facility. However, in the fracture, the second facility was finished on October 9th, 1942, and Takeo was dispatched there a month later to oversee the facility. The experiments that Division 9 were conducting only grew more and more twisted as time went on, and on February 6th, 1943, they began experimenting on spiders, POWs, their own staff, and mythical beasts. A few months afterwards, Takeo confronted the Emperor and called what Division 9 was doing unacceptable. As a result, the Emperor had Division 9 take Takeo prisoner on July 24th to be used as a test subject in their new plant-based experiments. Over 2 years later, on October 18th, 1945, Primus teleport onto a Japanese ship that's sailing off the coast of the island. They get captured and confronted by the crew of the ship, and we learn that Richthofen is linguistically challenged when it comes to the Japanese language. A fight ends up breaking out, and it's very Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade. Honestly, this is one of the most underrated intro cutscenes to any Zombies map in my opinion, but the ship ends up in flames, and Primus cling to a capsized lifeboat that drifts to the island where Ultimus Takeo is being held. Primus gets the abandoned facility powered back on, and they end up learning that the bunker goes far deeper than it seems, and that to get to the bottom of the facility where Takeo is, they need to repair a broken elevator. They do some pretty typical, island vacation stuff. They do some zip lining, kill a giant spider, shoot down a plane, but they also learn that Division 9 has been working with Group 935 to grow dragons for the Nazis to use against the Soviets. They end up getting replacement cogs from each of these fun, extracurricular activities, and they use said cogs to repair the elevator and descend into the heart of the bunker. At the bottom, they find that Ultimus Takeo has been mutated into a giant thrasher, and after a battle with him, they end up reverting him to his human form, and his mind is thankfully still intact. The two Takeos, Ultimus and Primus, sit down and have a nice heart-to-heart, as despite being from different timelines, they've lived a lot of the same experiences. Ultimus Takeo talks about how his accomplishments were unwelcome, and so he was betrayed, out of jealousy. Primus Takeo sees this, and rightfully is sickened and demands to know who could be so evil as to subject someone to the cruelty that Ultimus Takeo was put through. And it's revealed to Primus Takeo that the orders came from the Emperor himself, and this revelation sends Primus Takeo into a bit of an existential crisis. Because Takeo dedicated his life to serving the Emperor, who, it's worth noting, was seen as a divine and infallible figure during the 80 or so years that the Empire of Japan existed. It was literally in their constitution. Takeo is obviously a character who was raised in that culture and would end up dedicating his life to serving the Emperor as a samurai. And he learns that not only is the Emperor evil, but that not even he, the Emperor's envoy, is safe from said evil. I know that the disoriented Takeo clip is a bit of a meme, or at least used to be, but this is Takeo learning that his whole life is a lie. A lesser man would be crushed by that, but Takeo, since he's just the goat like that, tells his ultimate self that with his help they can secure a better tomorrow. But first, they need to blow away the ashes of the past. Ultimus Takeo understands what must be done and accepts his death. accepting Primus Takeo's katana to commit seppuku with. He asks Primus Takeo to be his kaishakunin, and Primus Takeo says it is his honor. Ultimus Takeo takes his own life, and his soul is captured. After this, the crew thinks that now it's time to go get Nikolai's soul, but Richtofen says they have something else to do first, and although it's not shown in game, this is where the Primus crew teleports to Richtofen's lab at Alcatraz to retrieve the blood vials, as an insurance policy. Zetsubou no Shima is the lightest on story out of any of the Black Ops 3 maps, mainly because it just has the shortest Easter egg in the game, aside from the Giant. It also doesn't have a character outside of the playable cast to add to the map story. Shadow's Evil had the Shadow Man, the Giant had Maxis, and Horizon had Primus butting heads with Dr. Groff the whole time. Yeah, Ultimus Takeo is the final boss of the map, but he isn't present at all in the map until you get to the boss fight, and even then he only has like 3 minutes of screen time when he's not a giant thrasher. Where the map shines is in its characters and in its dialogue. The ending cutscene is obviously great, but the actual dialogue between the crew during normal gameplay are also top-notch as always. This is a big turning point for the crew. Takeo gets the most focus and development out of the 4, and sadly this is really the one time that he gets the spotlight, not just in Black Ops 3, but in the series as a whole. Primus Takeo has always been more introspective and philosophical than his Ultimus counterpart, but this map is the catalyst for him breaking free of his misplaced faith in the Emperor and finding a higher calling, where he's willing to sacrifice himself to save the universe. And I know this happens in Black Ops 4, so I probably shouldn't mention it in the Black Ops 3 retrospective, but Takeo's development here in Zetsubou leads directly into how he's characterized in Blood of the Dead. And Primus Takeo in Blood of the Dead is probably my single favorite written character in the entire franchise. And his character wouldn't be where he's at in that map if he didn't get focused here on Zetsubou. But the rest of the Primus crew are obviously still going through their own shit too. Dempsey in particular is still processing having to check himself out at the end of Horizon, as he puts it. In the intro cutscene on the ship, he tells the Japanese officer that the summoning key will bring him nothing but pain. He's also a lot more level-headed here, and the other members of Primus comment that he seems more reflective than he was before. He even tries to prepare Takeo mentally for having to kill his other self, since, Dempsey kinda knows that's where this is heading. Nikolai is still reluctant to trust Richtofen, saying that he's insane. He's even closed off to the other members of Primus on this map, since when Takeo and Dempsey try to get him to open up, he just doesn't. The most he says is to Takeo, and it's that he has some dreams and aspirations he'd like to strive for, but he doesn't pursue them since war is all he knows. So yeah, he's kind of a tragic figure. And obviously we'll find way more about his tragedy in the following map, Gorod Krovi. And Richtofen is, well, he's Richtofen. He's still cryptic and lying to the rest of Primus by this point. He deliberately doesn't tell Takeo the name of who they're out there to kill, just referring to Ultimus Takeo as the test subject, despite everyone knowing that they're probably going to be killing Takeo's other self. He's even been deliberately manipulating Takeo up until this point by saying that he has a letter from the Emperor. Obviously, it's revealed that not only was this a lie, but Richtofen knew about the Emperor's betrayal this whole time and didn't tell Takeo, and just kept kind of holding it over his head to get him to do whatever he wanted. Richtofen does talk to Dempsey a bit and tries to console him about what he just had to do in Horizon, which is a nice way to build on him wordlessly consoling him in that map's ending cutscene with just nothing more than the hand on the shoulder as he checks himself out. Despite Takeo being the main focus of the map, this is a big turning point for Richtofen's character too, as is shown in his famous quote.
When I died, I felt nothing. When Dempsey died, I felt something. When Takeo died, I knew I had to try to save them.
This is the point where he starts to really care about the rest of the Primus crew, and that ends up coming through a lot more in the following maps of the game. The skull of Mount Sopway even has a bit of lore that you can find, and it's basically that it's the skull of a keeper who was the protector of the island and was worshipped by its people. Eventually evil threatened the island, and it's presumably Apothecon evil, and the keeper sacrificed himself and used his skull to seal away and protected the island. The last major chunk of story on Zetsubou are the map's radios. There's 5 of them, and they're all messages from Maxis to Richtofen giving vague hints about being in the house and setting up Dr. Monty, who would be revealed in the next map. They're cool radios and all, but they're kind of irrelevant nowadays because we know exactly who and what they were setting up. They also don't give any actual information about Zetsubou no Shima specifically, which is unfortunate. Out of Black Ops 3's 3 main fractures, the Prototone fracture is the fracture we know the least about, or at least the one that feels the least fleshed out. Really, the only other thing that we know about it is that in this dimension, Cornelius Purnell is actually a woman named Cornelia Purnell. That's the kind of multiverse shenanigans that Black Ops 3 doesn't indulge in too heavily, which is a good thing in my opinion. But it would be nice to have at least a couple other changes that differentiate the fractures from one another, especially in the Prototone fracture, since again, this is the one that feels the least developed. Aside from developing the characters a bit more and giving us Division 9 and the Prototone Fracture, the story in Zetsubou really feels a little lacking. I love what's there, the cutscenes in particular are, top notch as always, especially that ending cutscene, it's one of the best in the series. But the characters don't really do a whole lot when they're on the island. Thankfully, the atmosphere of the map is much more well fleshed out. Zetsubou is a very polarizing map, but the one thing that nearly everyone agrees is top-notch about it is the atmosphere and just general theming of the map. The island is an isolated nightmare that Primus are stuck in. It really does feel like a successor to Shinonuma. The labs are overgrown with plants and filled with bloodstains. Aside from the plane that flies over the island at the very beginning of the game, the only glimpse of the outside world is the occasional fighter planes having dogfights that blip into the sky above the island through dimensional tears. But the planes disappear through other tears just as quickly as they appear, so most of the time the map's ambience is pretty much silent. It's just you and the sounds of the island. So much of the map is also just coated in spiderwebs, especially inside of the bunker. If you're an arachnophobe, this is probably going to be the hardest map to stomach. But one of the most distinct and important aspects that gives Zetsubou its unique atmosphere is the map's unique color palette. The main colors of the map are green, yellow, and some in-between shades. There's mostly richer greens outside and more yellows and yellow-greens inside of the bunker, which give it a super sickly and uneasy feel. But there are some splashes of blue, like the area around Lab A, since that's where the blue water is, that area has more of a bit of a blue hue to it. Even the actual exterior of Lab A is painted blue. And the room where the skull of Non-Stopway is obtained is illuminated with blue light, which really helps to give that room an otherworldly, almost Lovecraftian feel to it, which is great since that's, the Keeper Room. It should feel otherworldly and Lovecraftian. The map is really creepy in general, but the scariest section is definitely the bunker. And the most iconic part of the bunker is definitely the specimen containment room. It's filled with giant test tubes filled with glowing yellowish green fluid, and each of them have a mutated test subject floating inside. The living quarters of the bunker are super creepy as well, since it's filled with those dead bodies wrapped up in spiderwebs hung from the ceiling. It reminds me a lot of Mob of the Dead, and I almost wish there were more of these cocooned corpses dotted around the map. The whole bunker, and really the whole map, feels a ton like something ripped out of a Resident Evil game. Maybe it's because I just finished Resident Evil Requiem, but that's just what comes to mind for me. Like, I know exactly the kind of notes that you would find inside of the bunker. June 18th, 1945. The arachnid testing has been going better than expected. Some of our scientists have been having the test subject mate with the giant spider who lives next to Lab A, because apparently that's been confirmed to have happened and isn't just a stupid rumor anymore. Yikes. Anyways, I have personally taken upon myself to create a hybrid species by injecting spider DNA into fertilized dragon eggs. We'll update with results. June 19th, 1945. They escaped. And since the map is set in Japan, okay, well, not modern day Japan, but was Japan when the map is set, it features Japanese-themed zombies, kind of like the ones from Shinonuma. And there's a really good mix of soldier zombies and scientist zombies, and some of the zombies even have just vines and moss growing on them to fit the whole nature and plant aesthetic of the map, since that is, one of Division 9's main things they're researching on. But like with the other maps, I want to bring special attention to the map's soundtrack and score, which I think is super well done. The majority of the songs on the map are on the more atmospheric side, which fits perfectly well on a map like Zetsubou that's going for that type of vibe. A good example of this is Beneath the Waves, which plays in the flooded tunnel in the bunker. The round change when spider rounds begin is also super memorable to me as a track that isn't really music but is still super foreboding, because it's just an air raid siren that goes off for an uncomfortably long time. 30 whole ass seconds.
Bring it on, you bug-eyed bastards. Your web-spinning days are done.
It's such a creepy way to start the round, and I almost wish that the map had a stronger, really slightly scarier special enemy that warranted so great of a warning. But the tracks with more heavy instrumentation have a very traditionally Japanese sound to them, with lots of flutes, shamisen, and taiko drums. It's actually really similar to a lot of the music from the Pacific campaign in Call of Duty World at War. You can especially hear this a lot with the normal round change music, which I'll be using for the transitions between segments of the video, as well as tracks like Island of Despair, which is the main theme for the outdoor parts of the island. But like the Rise and Rock before it, most of the best songs are heard during the Easter egg and boss fights. Like Arachnophobia, the song that plays when you're fighting the giant spider. The opening of the song just sounds like a bunch of spiders. It's very creepy. It's a motif that repeats in the background for the rest of the song too, and is easily the part that stands out the most to me. But the rest of the song is very solid boss fight music. It's very string heavy, with some parts even having a bit of a mischievous feel with a lot of string plucking going on. I'm being 100% deadass and not trying to be cute with this comparison, but it reminds me a lot of some of the music from Spider-Man Noir's levels of Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. I played that game a ton when I was a kid, and this song always reminds me a lot of that game's soundtrack, especially Hammerhead's boss theme. It's just complete ironic, just happenstance that the songs both have spiders in common. Mutant Takeo's theme, Betrayal, is a lot more video gamey sounding, which I think helps it stand out. But it still sounds right at home in Zetsubou, since it's very minimalist and atmospheric. It's mostly just some light synths, percussions, and some haunting vocals. I could complain that the song isn't bombastic enough, but honestly a song like that wouldn't fit here since the boss fight itself isn't crazy bombastic either. Like, the Giant Keeper's theme would feel super out of place here. Betrayal is a more low-key boss theme for the most low-key boss fight in the game. And of course, the song that plays during the end cutscene is just phenomenal, and is just another of the big examples of the music of Zetsubou featuring a lot of very Japanese instruments and elements. The beginning part of the track is great. The music does a really good job of just making you feel Ultimus Takeo's anguish.
I share this memory. I have lived many of the same victories. I later learned that my victories were unwelcome. His betrayal was driven by petty jealousy. He knew I could endure anything, that I feared not even my own death.
Then it plays, strangely enough, the loading screen sound effect mixed with the spider sound from Arachnophobia while Takeo learns of the Emperor's betrayal. But it works. It's a very jarring and disorienting shift in the music, and I shouldn't need to explain why that fits perfectly with what Takeo's going through at that point in time.
Your own loyalty. The orders came from the Emperor himself. My life, my path, was built upon a lie.
But my favorite part of the song is the ending portion. Primus Takeo achieves new clarity, and Ultimus Takeo knows the sacrifice he must make. And the music reflects this by turning into a calm and somber sounding shamisen piece that's really beautiful sounding.
This realm may have been corrupted and consumed by evil, but we possess the power to change things. A better tomorrow is only possible if we blow away the ashes of the past. None of us choose the means by which mercy will find us. But I am at peace. I understand what must be done. Will you be my kaishakunin?
But it doesn't last, as right before Takeo's killed, the song plays that classic 3-note zombies motif, since Primus's journey still isn't finished yet.
It is my honor.
At least that's how I interpret the shift in the music. But to me, the best song on the whole map is Skulls of the Damned, a song that plays at and around the challenge podium. With a name like that, you'd expect it to sound like something straight out of a Doom game, but it's actually a very somber track with some hauntingly beautiful vocals. It's honestly the main reason why I like spending time around the challenge podium whenever possible. It's just such a good track. I really wish I could spend more time talking about Zetsubou's atmosphere, but there's really only so many ways I can say, oh yeah, it's really creepy and I really like it. But it's just so unique compared to the other maps in Black Ops 3, which for the most part have much more urban and busy settings. Zetsubou is just so quiet and isolating. It really does feel like a bigger, more realized version of Shinonuma. Zetsubou clearly had a ton of thought and effort put into its atmosphere and aesthetic, and it really paid off since the atmosphere is the one thing about the map that remains pretty universally loved to this day. Sadly, the same can't be said about the map's Easter eggs. The one main area where I think Zetsubou is undeniably worse than the other Black Ops 3 maps is in the Easter egg department. The map has the shortest and most underwhelming main quest in the game, and only a couple of really notable side Easter eggs on top of that. The main quest is called Seeds of Doubt, and sadly this is the type of Easter egg where over half the quest is just spent getting yourself set up and building and upgrading the Wonder Weapon. You need the gas mask, the shield, and the KT-4. But not just the normal KT-4. To complete the quest, you need to build its upgraded variant, the Masamune, which requires you to acquire 3 new secret parts around the map. The giant spider's fang, the vial of liquid divinium, and the rainbow water plant. But before you can get one of those parts, you actually need to start the quest. The first step takes place in the living quarters right next to the purple water. On the wall is a torn map of the facility. If you use the mesmerize attack with the skull on the map, then the second half of the map will appear, and it'll show that the facility goes much deeper than it initially seems. Then you need to go to the lobby of the bunker and mesmerize this wall next to the elevator right next to the entrance. This lets you go behind the elevator and see that it's broken and needs 3 replacement cogs. Now you're at the bulk of the Easter egg, but to beat it you're going to need the Masamune, so let's get back to that. The spider fang is pretty easy to get, since you just need to kill the giant spider boss and then interact with its mouth to remove one of its fangs. Easy peasy. The liquid divinium vial can be found underneath Laboratory B. You need to shock the panel for the cage inside of the lab to open it up and then step inside the cage. The cage will then lower down into a small underground chamber, and there will be a skeleton embedded in the wall next to you with the divinium vial in its rib cage. Grab the vial before the cage raises back up and then you're ready to move on. The most time-consuming part to get is the rainbow water plant. At the bottom of the flooded 115 cave, to the right of where you got the plant to make the base version of the KT4, you need to use the Mesmerize attack with the skull on the wall to make it disappear. This reveals a small room with another plot of soil. You need to grow a plant here using rainbow water, which can be found inside the sewer tunnel from the bunker to Lab B. There's a giant rock of 115 inside of the tunnel, and if you press the interact button during the small window where you're right next to the rock, you'll collect the rainbow water. The rainbow water's gimmick is that it can randomly grow any of the different types of plants, but it's also required for building the Masamune. Place a seed at the secret garden plot and water it with rainbow water for the next 3 rounds. And I don't think it's necessary to fertilize it with the KT4, but I always do that too just to play it safe. And it's worth noting that this is the part that you need to mesmerize the map in the bunker for to be able to get. Until you do that, you cannot grow the rainbow water plant. Once you get all 3 upgrade parts, go to the second workbench in the bunker lab to create the upgraded formula and upgrade your KT4 into the Masamune. The Masamune is a very straightforward upgrade. It changes the color of the formula that the gun shoots from green to blue, and it has a lot more killing power, since the charge shot and its effects last like twice as long now, making it even more like the Sliquifier. And this is probably a very unpopular opinion, but the Masamune is one of my favorite wonder weapons in the game. I think it's just really, really cool. But back to the main quest. Once you reveal the broken elevator, you need to get 3 cogs. The easiest and most controversial cog, and also the most controversial Easter egg step in all of Black Ops 3, is incredibly simple. Just use the Anywhere But Here gobblegum after beginning the cog step. This will teleport you to a secret room at the top of Lab A. The cog is on the ground for you to pick up, but the whole room is basically a huge teaser for the following map, Gorod Krovi. Since this room reveals that Division 9 has been growing dragons for Group 935 and developing things like incubators and harnesses for the dragons. This is a really cool way to tease the next map, and it just sucks that you need to use a gobblegum to get up here. This is the only main Easter egg step in the whole game that requires you to use a specific gobblegum, and it really sucks. Yeah, Anywhere But Here is a classic gobblegum, so it's not as bad as it could be, but it's still a gobblegum that you need to level up to unlock. Years ago, I decided that I wanted to do the Zetsubou Easter egg, but forgot that I had prestiged my account, so I needed to re-unlock Anywhere But Here before I could go ahead and do the Easter egg, which was pretty annoying. But even aside from the fact that you might not have Anywhere But Here unlocked, because let's face it, that's a super niche problem, it also just sucks that you need to take up one of your limited gobblegum slots whenever you want to do the quest. Anywhere But Here is a super solid gobblegum, but I feel like most people would prefer taking something like Near Death Experience, Perkaholic, or Power Vacuum over Anywhere But Here. I don't know if this step is still as infamous nowadays, but back in the day, this was a super notorious step, and thankfully, Treyarch listened to the feedback from fans, and there was never a step that required you to use a gobblegum again. Treyarch just made different types of shitty Easter egg steps. Like, for example, the second cog, which requires you to shoot down a plane that begins to periodically fly over the island after you start the step. You need to shoot it down by using the anti-aircraft gun in the bunker, but there's one problem. The gun doesn't have any ammo, so you need to find some. Or, more specifically, you need to grow some. To get the anti-aircraft round, you need to grow a blue water plant and fertilize it each time you water it. It's a bit time consuming since you need to play a couple rounds, but otherwise that doesn't really sound too bad. And it really shouldn't be. The problem though is the bane of so many Easter egg steps, RNG. Because you only have a 1 in 7 chance of getting the AA bullet. Not too bad, since you can have a bunch of plants growing all at once. But your chances are even worse in practice, since there's also a secret type of plant that I didn't mention earlier, since I feel like it's more fitting to mention as an Easter egg, the clone plant. This is basically a save point / checkpoint plant. It kind of functions like the time bomb from Buried, but very differently. It's a little green pod that lets you interact with it to imprint yourself onto it. Then the pod inflates larger, and you can see that it has a blank-looking person inside, kind of like the test subjects inside of the bunker. If you die and bleed out, you'll respawn as the clone inside the plant with whatever perks and weapons you had when you imprinted yourself onto the plant. This is a really cool Easter egg, since it's theoretically an infinite source of revives. But you still need to play well and survive long enough to grow more of them. And it's also not guaranteed that you will grow a clone plant, since it's only a 50-50 chance that you grow one from one of these fertilized blue water seeds. It's also just super freaky as a concept, and is another example of the messed up stuff that Division 9 was doing on the island. And the implications it has on the story are pretty nutty. Like, it's my personal headcanon at this point that in some of the cycles, one or more of the Primus crew were replaced by plant people, like that one Goosebumps book. So the clone plants are pretty awesome. Unless you're trying to grow the upgraded blue water plant for the anti-aircraft bullet, since it just lowers your chances even more and leads to this being a super frustrating step. It can end up feeling like you have to spend forever just burning rounds and watering plants for a chance to move on with the step. But once you get the bullet, the rest is pretty simple. Go up to the AA platform and stand next to the gun. If you hold the interact button, you should hear a clicking sound, and that means that the bullet has been loaded. Now, just wait for the plane to fly overhead and be roughly lined up with the barrel of the gun, then you shoot the gun. The plane should explode and the cog will fly down into the map and can be picked up either outside the bunker, by the green water, or by the blue water. And then you're good to move on, unless of course you miss the plane, in which case you need to do the whole step over again and grow a new bullet. The last cog is pretty easy to get, thankfully, but you need to complete all your challenges since you need the electrified shield to get it. So the difficulty of this specific cog fluctuates a ton based on how many players in your game and how good they are at the game. But once you have the electrified shield, go to the zip line between Lab A and the dock. The cog is on the actual dock, which is normally inaccessible, but the zip line runs right over it. This step functions a bit differently whether you're in co-op or in solo, but it's pretty easy either way. In solo, shock the panel for the zipline before you take it, then melee when you're above the dock to drop down onto it so that you can grab the cog. In co-op, one player needs to take the zipline and another player shocks the panel with the electrified shield while the other player is over the dock to drop them down so they can grab the cog. And you can get these cogs in any order, which is actually really nice. I like when Easter eggs give you some freedom in the order that you go about completing the steps. But once you have all the cogs, you're pretty much finished. Put them into the elevator's machinery to repair the elevator, then you can take the elevator down like 4 stories into the heart of the bunker for the boss fight. Until you defeat the boss, you need the gas mask to survive in this area since there's a toxic gas, and you also need the Masamune to get to the boss fight. There are these big vines blocking the hallway to the bunker's dungeon, and you need to shoot the glowing orange spores with the Masamune to make the vines recede into the walls, clearing the way. This is actually a pretty clever and intuitive way to teach players how the boss fight is going to work before the fight actually starts. Once you reach the main dungeon of the bunker, you'll begin the fight against the Takeo Super Thrasher. He has 4 arms with glowing orange spores, and like all great Resident Evil bosses, you gotta shoot the glowing weak spot until it dies. Specifically with the Masamune. Once you shoot a weak spot, that arm will disappear, and the other spores will be covered up for a short time, and then you need to survive a bunch of zombies, spiders, and thrashers. You technically don't need to kill any of the enemies, since the only real factor in this boss fight is time passed, but it can be really easy to get cornered by thrashers and, killed by them. So I definitely recommend killing them all, which the Masamune is fantastic at. Thrasher Takeo can also swipe at you with his arms, but this attack is super easy to dodge and is also like his only real attack. So if you keep your distance, then the actual final boss of the map is practically a non-issue in his own boss fight. Just survive long enough and shoot all 4 of his arms, then you'll defeat the boss and get the ending cutscene, which is really good, but I already talked about it in the story section and the atmosphere section, so I won't repeat myself. Your rewards for finishing the Easter egg are a Perkaholic and the lowest level of the bunker becoming a playable area for the rest of your game, which is unironically the best Easter egg reward in the entire game, since the hallway with the elevator is the best camping spot in the entire game. Zombies and thrashers will only spawn in the boss fight room and will just funnel down the really long hallway towards you. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. And if the zombies start getting too close for comfort, you can just take the elevator back up to the main bunker to buy yourself some breathing room. The Easter egg is super short, and you spend most of it just getting the 3 cogs for the elevator. It just sucks that each of the 3 cogs have their own little annoyances baked into the methods of acquiring them. And it's not even a great Easter egg for speedrunning because of the RNG involved with getting the bullet. This quest was solved in less than 24 hours, which I think might still hold the record for the fastest main quest to be solved in any zombies game ever. It's not my least favorite Easter egg to do by a long shot, since if you get lucky, you can run through it in like an hour and a half, even if you're like me and are really bad at Easter eggs. Like, this is one of the only quests that I can pretty confidently do solo. And the story told by the Easter egg in its ending cutscene is pretty cool. I just feel like the map needed another big step or series of steps to make it feel more substantial. Since most of the quest is spent doing just general map setup stuff like upgrading the KT4 and completing your challenges. It's like how the first step of the Origins quest is getting and upgrading all the staffs, but on Zetsubou, that's pretty much the whole thing. The map does have a couple of pretty cool side Easter eggs though, like the map's main Easter egg song, Dead Flowers by Kevin Sherwood and Maluka. You activate this song by interacting with 3 sock monkeys found around the map. One is inside of Lab B, another is next to the blue water, and the last is in the bunker next to the KT4 table. Dead Flowers is one of the more unique Easter egg songs in Zombies, since it's a lot slower and less heavy than most of the other songs, as is the case with most of Maluka's songs that she does for the series. And because of that, it's pretty polarizing. I found a lot of really old Reddit threads from when the map first came out, where a lot of people were talking about how much they hated the song, or if they did like it, it's because it took forever to grow on them. But the people who like Dead Flowers really like it, like friend of the channel and frequent collaborator, David, aka Mom Tasty, who you'll see in my background footage for all my Zombies videos pretty much. Dead Flowers is his absolute favorite Easter egg song and has been pretty much as long as I've known him, like since middle school. Personally, I'm pretty fond of Dead Flowers. It's not in my top 10 Easter egg songs or anything, since I tend to prefer the heavier songs. That's just more the kind of music that I enjoy generally. But Dead Flowers is still really good. It's pretty creepy and offbeat, and it fits super well for Zetsubou. And the lyrics have a ton of symbolism like pretty much any good Easter egg song should. There's also a new version of Samantha's Lullaby known as the Magic Mix that you can get to play by giving specific amounts of water to these glowing yellow bulbs next to the purple water in the bunker. It's an awesome mix of an already really iconic theme for the series. It starts off really funky and slow compared to the other versions, but once it gets going, it just sounds so good. I especially like the strings that it has providing the bass of the song. This is low-key one of my favorite versions, if not my favorite version of Samantha's Lullaby. And it's also super nostalgic for me since this is the version of Samantha's Lullaby that Codename Pizza uses at the start of his Myth-Busting Mondays episodes. And I used to watch those things like religiously back in middle school between Zombies Chronicles and Black Ops 4. The map also has two main side Easter eggs, the Spider Bait and the Golden Bucket. The Spider Bait is a secret utility / wonder weapon, and to get it you need the electrified shield from completing all your challenges and the Skull of Non-Stopway. On a spider round, mesmerize all the spiders that spawn in, one of them will end up having a red aura around them. Kill all the other spiders but the one with the red aura, this is the thirsty spider. You need to lead it to each of the 3 main pools of 115 water so that it can drink from them. I don't think that the order you get it to drink the water matters, but what always works best for me when doing the Easter egg is leading it to the green water, then to the purple water, then to the blue water. After it drinks all the water, take the spider to Laboratory A and lower the cage. The spider should go inside and the cage will be raised up. Melee the cage's control panel with the electrified shield to lower the spider down below the lab, and this will end the spider round if this is the last spider you have alive. Survive the following round, and then the round after that will be another spider round, but all the spiders will have red auras and be stronger and more aggressive than usual. Once this spider round is finished, you can raise up the cage and the red aura spider from the first spider round will be replaced with a huge cocoon. Use the giant syringe arm used to get the spider gunk for the KT4 on the cocoon and it will extract red gunk instead, and this is the Spider Bait. Spider Bait lets you temporarily cocoon yourself in webs and play as a spider for about a minute, which is actually a really cool Easter egg. The spider can shoot webs which deal damage to zombies, but by the time you actually get the Spider Bait, the webs are better at making crawlers than killing. Still, you get unlimited ammo, so you can pretty much just spam the webs. You're also immune to any attacks from enemies when you're in the Spider Bait. The only ways that you can get forced out of it by the game are your time running out or walking into a spore cloud from an exploded spore, which is consistent with how enemy spiders work. I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but yeah, the spore clouds will instantly kill spiders. Spider Bait is an awesome side Easter egg. The worst part about it is that it's probably not worth the effort it takes to get it. Babysitting the red spider for like 10 minutes is such a boring thing to have to do, and honestly makes me not ever want to get the Spider Bait most times I play. Even with Spider Bait being as cool as it is. I mean, we wouldn't see anything like this until like the Mangler injector in Black Ops 6. The Golden Bucket is thankfully a lot easier to get as you can start working on it pretty much immediately, and the only extra thing you need is the Skull of Non-Stopway. You need to grow one of the 5 main different types of plants. One with no water, one with blue water, one with green water, one with purple water, and one with each of the 3 water types, i.e. a fruit plant. If you've done this and mesmerized the map in the bunker, then you can mesmerize a cluster of vines beneath Lab B, which will reveal a new soil plot. You can plant your bucket in this plot, and then 3 other plots will emerge under Lab B. If you plant a seed into each one of these, they'll all grow into plants that kill zombies, which you need to feed a ton of zombies too. Once they kill enough zombies, the trap plants will go away, and then the bucket plant will grow and open up and give you the Golden Bucket. The Golden Bucket is a direct upgrade from the normal bucket in one big way. The Golden Bucket can hold an infinite amount of whatever water you put into it, which is a huge change, especially if you mostly just grow one type of plant like I usually end up doing on the map. Sadly, if you want to grow different types of plants, you still need to run around between the different pools of water, though if you're fine with a little bit of randomness, you can always put rainbow water in the bucket and just grow plants completely randomly. But yeah, the Golden Bucket is super useful, and I go out of my way to get it a lot of the time when I'm playing Zetsubou. Way more than I go out of my way to get the Spider Bait, that's for sure. You can have hallucinations on the map if you breathe in too many spores. One of these can happen in Lab A, there's one in Lab B, and then there's one in the bunker. The lab hallucinations are very blink and you'll miss it, since they'll just play a loud noise and have new blood splatters appear on the workbenches in each respective lab. Pretty underwhelming. The really cool one is in the bunker, in the specimen room. It'll play the same scary noise, but the test tubes will change to red, and this is by far the coolest and most startling of these hallucinations. You practically have to be huffing spores like they're glue to start hallucinating, and once you build the gas mask, you're probably never going to breathe in straight spores for the rest of the game. So you really have to go out of your way to see these. Zetsubou no Shima also has one of the coolest jump scares in the series with one major problem. I just can't get it to work. First off, you need to be playing in co-op. You're supposed to stare at the different test tubes in the bunker with a sniper rifle. If you do it right, it's supposed to spawn in a doppelganger of one of the players in your game, who when approached will scream in your face and jump scare you. This is a really cool jump scare and is by far the most unique one in the series, since most of them just have you aim at a certain spot with a sniper, and then a scary JPEG pops up on your screen and screams at you. But again, I just can't get this one to work for myself, so I'll just be using someone else's footage, with credit of course. It's just so finicky and difficult to get to activate. I tried for like a good 20-30 minutes before I just gave up. I have probably like 25 gigabytes of footage of me just staring at this test tube. Another Easter egg I couldn't see for myself is spotting the Icarus from Mob of the Dead in the sky above the map. The Icarus has a minuscule chance of appearing out of a rift in the sky alongside the other planes, but I just never got this one to happen for myself, even after waiting for like 30 or so minutes. So I'll be showing this one with someone else's footage as well. And sadly, this is the last time in the game that the Icarus made an appearance. And lastly, you can spot a giant swamp monster outside of the map if you survive to round 50. Thankfully, this is one that I was able to complete for myself thanks to how good the elevator camping spot is. Once you hit round 50, head up to Lab B and you'll hear something roaring outside the map. If you look out into the swamp, you can see the silhouette of a monster slowly making its way across the swamp before disappearing. This is a small but a really fun one, and it's a nice little bonus for hitting round 50, which for most players, myself included, is a really big milestone. Zetsubou's main quest is by far the weakest in the game to me. Sure, its worst step isn't as bad as the worst steps in maps like Go Rod and Revelations, but the quest doesn't really have any high points aside from the ending cutscene. Sure, the Dragon Room is cool and all, but once you've been in there once and seen everything, that's pretty much it. Actually getting the cog and leaving takes all of like 5 seconds. And the side Easter eggs don't really make up for it either. The Golden Bucket and Spider Bait are cool, but are the only substantial side quests on the map. The hallucinations and jump scare are neat too, but you really have to go out of your way to trigger them. Zetsubou really feels like it's lacking in terms of Easter eggs and side content. Like, the main quest definitely need a few more really solid steps to make it shine. Since as is, the best thing about it is that you can choose the order you get the cogs in, but that's about it. And a few extra side quests would be appreciated too, since Zetsubou feels like it should be absolutely brimming with side content and secrets. But it feels like it's just got the least to offer out of all the Black Ops 3 maps in this regard. And maybe that's just because so much of the side content is mandatory when doing the Easter egg. Or it's just stuff that most people do every game, so it doesn't really feel like side content anymore. It just feels like main content. Mandatory content. But whatever the case is, Zetsubou definitely falls short of maps like Shadows of Evil and Horizon Rock in this area. Zetsubou no Shima is a tricky map to discuss, and it's had the community divided for a decade now. Sure, people have generally warmed up to it more as time has passed, but the map still has a lot of haters. Oddly enough, out of all the other Black Ops 3 maps, Zetsubou shares the most in common with Shadows of Evil, in terms of game design and also just how it took the community a long time to really appreciate it. Personally, I love Zetsubou because of its unique feel and gameplay. You know, much like Shadows of Evil, the early game is very quest-like with all the stuff you need to do. But unlike Shadows of Evil, Zetsubou does a much better job at staying consistently challenging for the entire game, even once you get yourself fully set up, which is something that I really like about it. But like Shadows, the setup process on Zetsubou is very lengthy and can get very repetitive if you play the map too much in too short of a time span. I mean, just ask me. Again, I played more Zetsubou in like 2 weeks for getting footage for this video than I probably have in the last 4 or 5 years, and I feel like I can go a year or two without playing it again, easy. It's a map that I can't just pick up and play. I really need to be in the right mood to play Zetsubou no Shima. But when I am craving Zetsubou, no other map will do. And what little story that the map tells is pretty top-notch in my opinion. Maybe it's because I'm just a big Takeo fanboy, but the Zetsubou ending is in my top 3 zombies moments easy. Sadly, at launch, Zetsubou was pretty panned by the community. Despite being a lot more complicated than Horizon Rock, the community felt like it was a big step backwards from Horizon Rock. Less wonder weapons, more gimmicky features, and less Easter eggs. It especially didn't help that the main quest took less than 24 hours to solve, meaning that the community had basically nothing to work on long term aside from ciphers. Made even worse by the fact that the gap between Zetsubou and the next DLC was a whopping 87 days. This time between DLCs 2 and 3 is thought of as sort of a dark age for Call of Duty Black Ops 3 Zombies. Since Zetsubou didn't really have the longevity or replayability of Horizon Rock, the community pretty much died down during that 3 months or so between DLCs. But it would all be worth it in the end, as DLC 3, Gorod Krovi, would revitalize the community and serve as the acclaimed penultimate entry of the Black Ops 3 saga. But that's a story for next time. Consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already, since it really means a ton to me. Peace out and God bless. I'll catch you on the flip side.